So bear with me. I'm a bit busy here, so in the studio this week. I'm standing on dog's feet here. They're driving me bananas. Two of you can't sit your fat asses on that chair. Yeah. So I'm a bit busy. I've got sewing stuff and everything to do. Yeah, busy in the studio. Get my words together. What I've been doing, I've been sewing bits. It's taken me all morning to cut out 3 project bags to get sewn up. Plus I sewed up some pod bags, which you can see behind me, because I got hijacked by a neighbour a couple of months back, to vend at a craft or a family fun day, and they've got marquee for local crafters and stuff like that. So yeah, so the money's going to a charity called Calderwood, and they are a local charity that help ex-veterans and vulnerable adults that are homeless. So they help them get housing, or help them fill out application forms, or to get private housing, or whatever suits their needs. So they raise money for that and help them get furnished and things as well. They give them the support that they need to get them back on their feet from being homeless. Totally real. I totally can understand where they're coming from on that. I brought up in the armed forces. My father and my ex-husband were in the army. Though they never went through any of that sort of experiences, they were quite lucky. I was made homeless on two occasions. 3 3 times I've been homeless. Yeah, so I can totally relate to the needs, and being a ex-armed pad brat and ex-wife of a soldier, there's no support for us women out there when it comes to being divorced or the families and everything else. So yeah, it's really, really hard being a military kid, trying to get sorted out in the environment of Civvy Street, because it's just not the same. It's not the same environment. People's attitudes are completely different. We're very, very naive, very sheltered, coming from that environment, being brought up in the armed forces. Anybody that has lived that life, they totally get where I'm coming from. So yeah, what have I been doing? I've been cutting out project bags this morning, my large ones. The ones that I've got that I do, have a zip on the front, so I'm coming out of the way. It's a bit hard to show you because I've literally taken the last 2 hours doing them. So I'll start sewing up the fronts of them in a minute. So yeah, they're you end up with a bag like that. So you've got, that's the inside pocket. I think, hold on a second, inside pocket, and then that's the other bit that goes at the bottom of there. And they're quite large, these bags, so they'll zip up like that. And then you have some little loops that come down the front here and a flip over. So they're quite large. They're about, I think they're about 30 centimeters big, large. Let me just see, roughly about 35 centimeters long. They've got to get boxed in the bottom, and then they have a flip over the top. I've got one that's mine. I have one that's mine, and this is the sort of thing that I make, as well as doing what I do. These are my little bylines. These are my bylines. These are what I do every so often, and then wing them up on the website. So that's what I'm in the middle of making at the moment. So I've got this gorgeous one with this gorgeous fabric here. So yeah, that's what I've been doing this morning. I've made a couple of eco-friendly rabbit bags, so for felters. I thought, you know what, I'm going to a local family fun day, and that's what I say, where I'm vending. And what I do for a living, niche wise, is anybody that usually comes onto my YouTube channel or buys products from me from the website. It is a niche hobby. It's a niche skill. It's spinning wool into yarn. Oh, dog, honest to goodness, spinning wool into yarn, that is hand spun wool. And I blend it in things like that. If anybody's interested, who's not new to here, you've never seen what it is that I do over here on Willie Cottage Fibre Shop. Is I spin wool for myself and to sell, and I do demos on here. That's hand spun. It's merino and blended with silk fibres. You can see that lime green in there. So yeah, that's what I do, and I sell it worldwide for yarn spinners, weavers, knitters who like to create their own unique stuff. Also felters. A lot of felters buy my products as well, so they can use them and incorporate them either in the wet felting, needle felting, nuno felting, that sort of thing. So like wool locks and all the rest of it. And then those that are in the background here, this sort of thing, these ones are art bats. So I blend up majority of the time British breed wools, and then I dye them, and then I blend them with silks and plant-based fibres, or camel, high mortal, thank you Leopoldo. I blend them up with silks and plant-based fibres like rose and nettle, those sort of things, and I get them from a supplier in the UK. And felt, you can do all sorts with these things, in the sense of you can wet felt with them, you can spin them up, as I say, into yarns, and knit yourself project jumpers, knit yourself scarves. There's loads of artisans throughout the world that do this and keep this old craft alive. Smells lovely. So yeah, that's what I do. If you have never seen anything like this before, there are a few of us on YouTube, not a lot, but there are a few of us. I've been doing this for nearly a decade now, selling as Willie Cottage 8 years. So yeah, as well as my little bits in between. So these are actually Hessian squares, and then inside you fill them up with just some really, really cheap rice, and then you stitch it up, and then you can use it for needle felting with as well. So you've got something that'll last you a long, long time. They're double layered. So those I've been making. I've only done a few, but enough to be able to just have some bits and pieces on the table, with the option, the hope is to actually sell something. It's always the thing when you go to these fairs, isn't it? You're never quite sure if you're going to get some customers that know you're in the area and like, oh, we're up on holiday, because I'm in the Lake District. I'm in the Lake District on the coast of Cumbria. So not many people come over this way unless they're looking for a caravan that's a little bit cheaper than going to Kendal or to Keswick and that sort of place. But yeah, I'm based on the outskirts of a little town called Whitehaven, a very historical Georgian town on the west coast of England, up the north. So about an hour south of Carlisle, if you're interested. As the crow flies, about 2.5 hours down to Liverpool. Not through the county though. It takes us about 2.5, 3 hours to get through the county. We literally have one motorway. It's called the A595, and it comes from the top all the way down through the county, and that's it. That's all we have. That's all we have. So I'm going to get sewing up these zips in a minute, but the other week there, when I was on for a little live chat after having a bit of a reprieve away from the YouTube world for a bit and just sticking up old Patreon videos, I did say if anybody wanted me to do a Q&A, just to put comments or questions or thoughts or ideas or whatever, a bit like what I do over in Patreon, but over in Patreon it's more detailed, and I do a lot more videos that you guys don't see over here. They get released about 6 months to a year later. I said, if you've got any thoughts or ideas, pop them down, and the next time I come up, I will drop you some of my answers. Obviously, I've been dyeing wool and plant-based fibres for a long, long time. So, yeah, I have asked, I'll get on with these now. Sue Fisher said, what are most fibres receptive to being dyed? And the answer is yes. Yeah, you can dye anything. The only thought you need to put in place with that is if you're dyeing, there's two different types of dyes. You've got your procreon dyes, which is a cold water dye, and you have your acid dyes, which you can use citric acid, which is it's an ingredient that's used in bath bombs. It's a food grade item. It's not poisonous. It's not an acid, but because it's made from, I think it's made, and I was positive, it's made from dehydrated lemon juice. So that's the citric acid. It's very, very tart. It's put in things like, you know, your or your really sour sweets. That's the sort of stuff, and that's what's used with citric with acid dyes. So if you want to dye things like cotton, rose fiber, nettle fiber, what else? Trying to think, plant-based fibers, sea cell, tencel, bamboo, those sort of fibers, you're going to want a procreon dye. A procreon dye where you actually use a cold water soak, and you dye them like that, and you've got to leave them for a specific length of time, and it's actually a really, really long process to dye with procreon dyes. I find it long-winded. It takes at least a day or two. You've got to pre-soak the fiber first in a potash mordant, that sort of thing, and then you use the dye that you've made up from the procreon, and then you go in afterwards and you've got to rinse it until it's completely clear, and it's really, really messy, and you've got to really have a space outside of your home or a dedicated studio area. Whereas I'm home based, my studio is upstairs in a spare bedroom. In my spare bedroom, we've had the studio up here for about 4.5 years now. But all my dyeing is done downstairs in my kitchen area because I'm just a small batch dyer. I don't do industrial amounts of dyeing. Hiya, Anne. I'm just about to get to your question in a minute, love. Walk, I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for asking, sweetie. Hope you're doing well. So yeah, so you want cold water dyes is procreon dyes, and that's how you want to dye those sort of things. Now, your acid dyes, general rule is that's your protein fibers. So your sheep's wool, your goat's wool, your goat's fiber, like kid mohair and that sort of thing, Angora, cashmere, camel, yak, all those sort of fibers are animal-based fibers. So the fur that the fiber, the coat, the blanket that comes from the fleece from the animal, those are protein-based fibers. So those you use acid dyes with. An acid dye is really easy to use, really simple. I have loads of videos on my channel showing you how I do dyeing and how to do it and everything else, and the ratios and that sort of thing. You've got it. There's about nearly 400 videos over on this channel. I have been doing this for about 5 years. Yeah, I have nearly 5.5 years I've been on YouTube. So with that, you use just your water out your sink. You want 2 different types of dyeing pots. You want a roasting tray. They've got to be stainless steel, or you can have a deep stock pot. And the one that I've got downstairs, I think I'm positive it's a 10-litre stock pot. And that you use for kettle dyeing, which means that you can dye a full 100-gram rovings or any type of amount of fiber so that it can be dyed solidly, or you can use it in specific ways to create long stretches of colour change. If you bear with me a second and I'll show you what I mean. On a second. Let's see. So there's that one and one with long colour changes. Right. So when I'm using my dye pot, which you know if you go back and have a look at some videos, I actually did a video at my last live chat a fortnight ago. I was showing you how I dye my rovings up, because these are the results of what I dyed up. So this one's a long colour change. So you've got longer sections of colour, okay, that go all the way through the roving braid, right? And you can do that method using a roasting tray or a bain-marie. It's all catering stuff. It's nothing. There's no suppliers out there that you can buy these items from, as in like your wool suppliers where you buy all your raw ingredients. You have to go out there and hunt for them. But you want stainless steel trays or stainless steel stock pots with a heavy bottom preferably. And then this one is shorter colour changes. Can you see how every so often the colour goes from, like, you've got lime neon green into a teal green and a turquoise, and then you've got the blue going in there, and then you've got the purple, and then it changes again back to a blue, and then it goes into that lime green. So they're the shorter colour changes, and those are great to do in your dye tray. If you're wanting that quick, short colour change all the way through. Acid dye is not, as I say, it's not an acid. You want to use a citric acid. Now, Anne, you asked me on your question, where do you get, where do you buy citric acid? Generally, if you're in the UK, Home Bargains has started selling it in boxes, and it costs about £2.50 or around about £2 for 100 for about 250 grams. Now, me personally, because I use quite a lot of citric acid on a regular basis, I actually buy mine from, okay, and I can get a litre bag for just shy of £6. So a litre bag, a kilo bag of citric acid for just under £6. There are other companies on that website that will not mention, but the one with the A on it. There are companies out there, sellers out there that are selling it for anything up to £20. You don't want to be buying them because it's exactly the same. You want food grade safe citric acid. That's it. It's the same stuff that's used in bath bombs. It's used in sour sweets and all sorts of things. So yeah, that's where you want to buy it. But if you've got hardware store, ironmongers or whatever near where you live, or try your supermarket and look on the cleaning aisle section of your supermarket, or one of those shops that do a bit of everything, go in and have a look in there, and you might be able to find it on there where you find your floor cleaner, your bicarbonated soda for cleaning your ovens, those sort of things. You may find it on those shelves. If not, that's where I get mine from, because I buy it at a kilo at a time. So there we go. I think that, I don't know, on a minute. Right, so somebody asked, is there a water to dye ratio? So yes and no. Yes and no is my answer. Yeah, when you're dyeing in a tray, more especially if you think about yarn. If you're dyeing in a tray and you're using your yarns to dye with, your manufactured milled yarns that are undyed and you buy them in, you're looking at, in your tray, you want, depending on what type of wool dye effect you want, if you want it where the colours are really quite striking, and it's the same with roving as well, where the colours are quite striking, you don't want that water to go above the level of the fibre in your tray. And as I say, there's videos on here. I will try and remember to have a look later on if I don't get carried away with my sewing machine and get sewing. But you'll find if you put too much water in, the water level goes up and above your roving or your yarn, the dye is going to float around. It's all going to mix in and bleed to itself, right? So in that term, yes, there is. But the most important thing you want to worry about is your dye gram to water ratio, or your dye to wool ratio. So as a general rule, you want 1 gram of dye pigment to 100 grams of fibre. Okay, so that's a general rule. Now, the last that asked this question asked, this is Sue Fisher, sorry. Do you just wing it, sort of just add bits and pieces, add different water levels? Yeah, I do wing it, only to a point that I know, as I say, if I put water in there too high above my fibre level that's laying in the tray, then that's not going to work. I'm not going to get strong colours. They're going to blend in together. It's going to get really, really muddy, especially if you're using colours like green and red together. They're going to go brown, and that's what you're going to end up with. So you really just need to keep an eye on the water level. Now, if you're wanting the colours to be like that and you want it to be solid, that's where you use your big stock pot and you do kettle dye. That's the term that's used for that. Then I literally just throw it all in one go, straight in to the pot with the dye, and then I add my citric acid. So this is the terms that you want to think of. So as a general rule, 0.25 grams or 0.25 grams to 2 grams of dye per 100 grams. So it's a pinch. the darker you want the colour to be, you want to add a bit more. If you want it more of a pastel, say purple for instance, then you're going to want less. If you've got a colour that's a really quite dark striking colour anyway, say like a navy blue, then you want to stick with less is more because it's quite a dark colour pigment. And as you work with your dyes and the dye brand that you're using, you get to understand the different variations, the different strengths. Hiya, Alison. You get to understand the different strengths of the pigments. So I'm trying to think. I mean, if you don't want to be messing around with the amount of dye and getting used to if you add more water to say a 1 gram of dye, say you had a pot of, and I've got a video on here, there is a video on here that shows you how to do it, but if you've got 1 gram of dye in one pot, 1 gram of dye in another pot, and you have fill one pot up to 250 milliliters and fill the other pot up to 500 milliliters and try them both out in the oven, the one that's got 500 milliliters with the 1 gram of dye is going to end up being a weaker color. Okay, the one that's got the 250 milliliters with 1 gram of dye is going to be a stronger color. So, and this is another thing that I remember I've seen over the years is people say, where can I get hold of white dye? There is no such thing as white dye. Your water acts like your white. It's the water that waters down your color pigment. So that's the bit that acts like a white as such. It's diluting down the dye pigment. So the more water you add to that 1 gram, the weaker or the lighter that color pigment is going to get. The less water that you add to that 1 gram, the darker and the stronger that strength is going to be. Okay, now it's just a bit of experimenting. It all depends on what you want to do with it. If you want a solid color, then I would put in that 1 gram of that 250 milliliters of dye, or that 2 grams of dye into a dye pot, into a stock pot. I'd add in the Rovin to that. I wouldn't put the citric acid in yet. I would wait and see how that colour is striking that wool, because it will still settle, it will still strike that wool, okay, even with the citric acid in. So while the water's warming up, you need the heat, which is another question. Do you need heat for dyeing wool? Yes, you do, because you need the heat for the dye to penetrate into the fibres, for it then to saturate into the dye and pigment it, make it pigmented, okay? So once you've got that colour, if you decide that you want that wool, say navy blue, to be darker, okay, then you can add in a little bit more into that dye, into your big stock pot. And you want the water to be able to, you want more water than you've got wool in there, because you want it to float around, and you want the dye pigments to be able to saturate that floating wool that's not constrained like it would be if it's in the dye tray. When it's in the pot, it gets to swim around a little bit. So the molecules and the heat and all the rest of it bubble away, and they can get into all the nooks and crannies. There's nothing's folded, nothing's squashed up together. So it should end up with a more even dye ratio throughout your oven. Okay. Then once you've got the right colour that you're looking for, and it's the right tone that you're looking for, then add in your citric acid and leave it for a little bit in that water, simmering away, not bubbling, just simmering away in that nice gentle heat until all the pigment is completely saturated. If the colour of the dye is already saturated away and the water looked nearly clear anyway, before you put the citric acid in, put your citric acid in anyway, because you need that to fix the dye to the wool. If you were to take that out and go and rinse it off, it would practically fall out, okay? So you do need the citric acid anyway when using acid dyes. So anyway, I hope that any other questions, is anything that anybody thought, oh Joe, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, just put it down here and I'll elaborate a little bit more. Is citric acid better than vinegar, or does it matter? And it doesn't matter at all. Citric acid, white vinegar is the most easiest one to get with. The only difference in using it is, I found, because I used to use vinegar for at least the first 2 years that I was dyeing, more for experimentation and me teaching myself how to do it before I actually officially started selling this Woolly Cottage. But it's the smell. That's really the only difference. And the amount that you use as well. Your vinegar, do not over pour the vinegar into it, because you'll find that the wool ends up feeling a little bit more scratchy. It evens itself out, and when you do the after soak anyway, with your hand wash or your shampoo or your Eucalan or whatever it is that you use for your after rinse to help bring up the pH balance, it evens itself out. But the difference between the citric acid and the vinegar is easier to get a hold of. Citric acid is as well, if you know where to go. Because you've always got vinegar in the cupboard anyway. But it has to be white vinegar, not the malted vinegar or cider apple vinegar. You can use lemon. Lemon juice will do the job as well. Have a little experiment with that, with just a little swatch of your Fibre. Yeah, so the difference between them is cost, the amount, the availability, and the smell. If you're only working with a small area, and as I say, you haven't got a dedicated studio and you're doing it at home in your kitchen, the vinegar's fine, but after a while it can get a little bit pongy, especially when you've been outside, or if anyone comes in and it sort of clings to the air a little bit. But it's nothing compared to washing sheep's wool in that sense. Do you know what I mean? With the lanolin and all the rest of it. So I mean, no, it's not a bad smell. It's just there is an odor in the air. If it's all you can use, then that's fine. Have at it. Just remember, you don't need a lot. Really? You're trying to chase a fly. You don't need a lot of vinegar anyway. Okay? Maybe on a vinegar bottle, you've got the caps on the top, especially Sarson's vinegar that we have here in the UK. Take the little top off the top of it and put 2 caps of vinegar into your water. If you find that your dye is not saturating, then add a little bit more. That's how I'd work with vinegar. But preference-wise, citric acid is a little bit easier to work. It's easy to work with. It's clean and it's easy to store away as well. And it hasn't got an odor. Not that I've noticed anyway. And I just prefer it. It's just easy for me to work with. And I know where I am with it as well. I've been using it for years now. Now, when I was on about the Procreon dyes earlier on and the plant-based fibres, there's an exception to the rule when it comes to acid dye. You can actually dye silks with it. So your Tussa silk, your peduncle silk, your mulberry silk, those sort of silks, because they are a byproduct of an animal. So a moth or a botfly type thing, you know what I mean, from caterpillars and all the rest of it, the silkworms. So yeah, it is a byproduct, so you can actually still dye them as well, the citric acid. And I do quite often. And to be fair, I actually dye quite a lot of a few plant-based fibres in my citric acid, and nylons like trilobal, faux cashmere, faux angora, those sort of the nylon-based man-made fibres. You can use them in citric acid as well, and they work really, really well and get really, really bold, striking colours. I do have one over here, not so much the trilobal because I used that up the other day, but these are from my citric acid trays. So this is actually Tussa silk. So that's been dyed in the tray along with the roving that I've used to dye it as well. Is it best to dilute citric acid and keep in a bottle, or just throw it in the granules? Just throw it in with granules. Don't bother making it up in a batch because it will go off. If you want to make a batch up of dye stock, right, so I did write this down just on the off chance. So I remember, let me just see if I can find it. I did have it. Where is it? Right. If you want to do a dye stock solution, it's a 1% solution. So, for instance, 5 grams of dye stock to half a litre of water. Okay. So, like if you've got a bottle half litre bottle, I don't know, plastic bottle that you've got at home, put in 5 grams of dye stock into there, and then fill up that half a litre bottle to the top. And there you've got, give it a really, really good shake as well. Don't be adding any citric acid into it. Okay, leave it as it is. Put a little label on the front of it of your ratio that you've done. Right, your 5 grams of dye stock. If you want a lighter colour of that one, say you've got a sage green, instead of doing 5 grams, just do 2.5 grams to your half a litre of water, warm water in the bottle. Do what you have to do to help break down those molecules. Then from there, you can use that as a dye stock solution, and then you can dilute it down to any strength that you want. So yeah, that's really it. That's it. So I hope that was, is it best? Yeah. So yeah, that's what you want to do. Dye stock solution, you want a 1% solution, you want 5 grams of dye in a half a litre bottle with your half a litre of liquid, and that will give you the solution that you need to get started. And then you can have your little beakers, your 250 milliliter beakers like what I use, and then you can put in a ratio blend of 5 of them and put, say, 10 milliliters of your dye stock that you've got in your bottle in one, and then go up to 15 milliliters, and then go up to 25, and then go up to 50, say, or go up to 150 or whatever, and then fill those up to your 250 level with normal water at the sink, at your tap. And then you've got different varieties and different variations of a dye stock solution that's going to give you a gradient colorway. This is something that I've been on about, Alison, over on Patreon, because that is subject that is actually in the book that I'm writing. Yeah, ratios. Do you use glass? Milk container got eaten through with a dye solution. Well, did you use a plastic bottle? It's not something that I do. I don't do dye stock solutions because I don't have the room to put them all. You can use a glass bottle if you want, but it's got to have a proper seal on it. You must have added in the citric acid into the milk bottle if it's a plastic one. Unless the plastic was, yes, it was plastic, might have been recycled. You must have put citric acid in with it again. No problem, Alison. I'll drop you. I never got your email, but I'll drop you an email later on, and I will send you a link to one of those videos that I went on about. Yeah, I can't understand why the dye stock solution would have gone through it. I've seen people use sauce bottles. You know, the plastic catering ones with the funny little nozzle on the top. You can get those. Get one of the, you know, when you've got like the tiny little squeezy lid on the top of it, and you've got the little cap that goes on the top. I've seen people use them as a dye stock solution. If you find that you can only find them in, say, 1/4 of a litre thingies, reduce down your dye pigment, okay? So, like, if you can only find 2.5 litres, 0.25 litre bottles for, like, liquid-wise, millilitres, so yeah, 250 milliliter bottles to put them in, then reduce your dye weight down from 5 to 250. Okay, 2.5 grams of dye pigment to your 250 milliliters, and that should give you, and that's generally going back to the ratio for dyeing anyway. But if you want to use small ones, use jam jars with your lids on, old sauce jars, tartar sauce jars, those sort of things. Just use those, they'll work. And as I say, remember to put the tab on the front of it, a little sticky label, write what dye solution it is that you've got in there, and the name of the colour so you remember. But yeah, that's what you're looking at. 10 grams if it's a litre bottle, if you can get that. But I think that's massive amount. And the odds of you using that amount up, even I wouldn't. And it'll sit in there. It should sit in there for at least a good 6 months to a year without you really having to worry about it too much. But I can't understand why it would have melted through plastic. I have no idea. So anyway, I'm going to go, what time are we now? past. So I think I'm going to go pop off now. I will get a video filmed for next week. I'll release one of my Patreon videos tomorrow. So if you want to catch up with that, you're more welcome. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you don't already, hit that bell notification. It's completely free. I really do appreciate it. I'm nearly at 1,000. I can't wait to get to 1,000. It's been 5 years in hard work. Thank you very much. And you take care of yourself, lovely. And I will be popping over to Instagram. I'm going to say this weekend, but I'm not. It'll be properly next Saturday. This Saturday, if you're in the area or in Cumbria area, I'm at Egremont Castle in the grounds this weekend, 2 times over from where I am. I'll be vending in the marquee, selling my wares. I've got my pod bags. I'm doing project bags. I'll be bringing my art bats, some rovings, my blend sets. I might even squirrel away some of my Turkish spindles and niddy noddies. Who knows? I might get some yarn spinners or felters there. And we'll be raising money for ex-armed forces and homeless people. That's what Calderwood do. Calder Bank charity over in Egremont. So it'll be Egremont Castle on the grounds this Saturday from 12 till 5. If you're in the area, up on holiday, you want to come through just for something to do. They've got bouncy castles, they've got food vendors and other bits and pieces, face painting, kids make their own badges, all sorts of bits and pieces going on. So you're more than welcome to come and join us. If you can't, I shall catch up with you in a couple of weeks' time. If not, you can always catch me over at Instagram once a fortnight for a live chat. Thanks for joining me today. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Don't forget, if you've got any other questions or queries or thoughts, stick them in the comments below any of my videos, and I do go back, write them down, and I will get back to you with any answers. Thanks for watching.